to Heart-Led Changemakers, the space where leadership returns to the body, to the mission, to the soul. Today's guest is someone whose presence whispers legacy. Andrea Petersen is not just a founder, not just an accountant, she's a steward of purpose in a sector that rarely gets the spotlight it deserves. As the founder of NFPAS, Australia's leading not-for-profit accounting specialist, Andrea has spent nearly 30 years building something more than a business. She's built a culture of numbers with heart, a company where strategy meets service, where people and purpose sit at the center of every decision. In today's conversation, we're going to explore what it means to lead beyond the ego, to build a mission that lasts without clinging to titles, to understand that sustainability isn't just financial, it's relational, cultural, and energetic. So, we're going to talk about transitioning out of the CEO role with grace, about how well-being becomes a strategy, and why now more than ever, the leaders we need are those brave enough to choose purpose over performance. So if you're a founder, a CEO, an entrepreneur, or simply someone who feels the call to lead differently, this one's for you. Let's dive in and welcome Andrea to the podcast. Welcome, Andrea.
Wow. What an introduction. That was beautifully written. I've never been introduced like that before. That was amazing. Thank you. And thank you for having me on.
You're so welcome. And it's such a gift to have you here because you've spent decades shaping the not-for-profit sector, not just through numbers, but through heart. But this work is so soulful. And I'd really like for us to start with how this work came about for you originally. Like, where was the starting moment for you?
I guess the first introductions to not-for-profit organisations happened when I was a kid, really, and you don't necessarily understand how many not-for-profits actually touch you through your life. So I was a member of Girl Guides. I played netball for the local netball club. Went to church with my parents every Sunday, and they're all not-for-profit organisations. I went to uni. I was a junior house mistress at a girls' college when I first came to Adelaide. I even like worked for a not-for-profit for a while without even kind of realising even what a not-for-profit was. Um, and I guess my first introduction to not-for-profit organisations as an accountant was after I had my son. I was going to take a couple of years off actually and not work for a while. But a former student of mine, when I was working at university, had got a role as a business manager in a not-for-profit organisation, and she needed an accountant because their funding had increased significantly. So I went just a few hours a week initially, and that was my first foray into not-for-profit organisations as an accountant. Um, and I just couldn't find the information that I needed at that stage. This is like a long time ago, so the internet was just a baby at that stage, and so I was asking questions of my peers and of the treasurer and other accountants, and there just really wasn't one source of information to go to for how to manage a not-for-profit financially. Um, so yeah, I thought I saw the opportunity for a business, I guess, after 3 years working for this particular organization and then getting a couple of other jobs around the place. I thought, yeah, there's a business here where I can make a difference and be of help to not-for-profit organizations. But even preceding that, I guess the sector really resonated with me because of the upbringing that I had. We went to church every weekend, and that we had a particular church minister who was very much into being of service to others and what it meant to what it meant to be what it meant to be of service, I guess. And it was probably in hindsight I can see how much that resonated with me. I really wanted to be of service and make a difference in the world, and not from a point of I know everything and I'm going to change it, but really it's like, well, how can I bring my skills and my expertise and help others? And yeah, that's been like really a bit of a mantra of mine for many years. and also why the sector I think resonated with me so much, because I'm not on the front line. I'm not, not delivering food or blankets or, providing shelter to the homeless and things like that. But my skill is really in the numbers and the information that I can provide those organisations that are doing that. And I think I've got a lot of sensitivity as well. Like, I think it would really have buried me to be around a lot of suffering face to face. It's easier for me to kind of be that level back and help those who can be that face. Be that. I guess. I have been in situations where I have been. I've been like in a women's shelter, for example, at the computer doing work, but hearing stories in the background, and it just breaks my heart. And I don't want to be distracted by that. I want to be able to, bring my best self and do the best work I can, and let the others who've got that strength and that particular skill in being that frontline person, because it does take a lot to do that. So that was a very long-winded and rambling kind of way of kind of bringing all the points together. But I think it was like this particular church minister, it was the way that my parents operated as well. I think they have a lot of sensitivity in this. So I saw them doing things in the background, like being on the committees. There was always a World Vision picture of a World Vision sponsored child on the fridge. It was, my grandmother, for example, was in the Red Cross for 40 years and, forever baking and running baking sales and things like that. So my family is traditionally, I guess, being that support role, not necessarily the front line, kind of, as I said, like handing out soup or um, blankets or being social workers as such. It was definitely like, what can we do from the position that we're in, doing what we do best. So yeah, so definitely parental influences and community influences, and I went to Adelaide, became an accountant, which was, I could have gone to been an accountant for a mining industry or, corporate or something like that. But it was, when I found the not-for-profit sector, I really, worked out this was mine. Because I did go through a phase where I thought, I don't want to be an accountant anymore. So I went to university and lectured at uni for a while, and really got very good at my craft, because the best way to learn something is to teach it. And then I didn't want to do that anymore. And then I thought, well, I'll have a baby and then I'll do that. But then this opportunity came along, and it was really I could see all the things that I had done in the past had really set me up for this role. Like, I was an auditor when I went into accounting first, and most people don't necessarily want to stay in auditing. It's kind of a great grounding thing. So I thought, once I finished in auditing and went more to business services, I thought, I'm never auditing again. But of course, auditing is a great way to actually bring a lot of your skills and expertise to a not-for-profit organisation, because they have to get an audit. They might not be able to afford to have you as a CFO, regularly, but they have to have an audit. They have to pay for an audit. So the audit for some organisations is the only opportunity they get to get some real skills and expertise into their organisation. So for me, that became, rather than something I didn't want to do, it became a pathway into the organisation to be able to have a voice, make a difference, and help, organisations get to that next level that they could get to with the right advice and experience.
I mean, there's so much in what you've just shared. I I think it is no coincidence that your family sort of set the tone. They set the awareness within you from when you were a child that that there is more than just you. And whether that was taking you to church, whether that was the individual things that you were witnessing, whether that was participation in sponsoring children, across the world, all of those things add up and they sit in your foundation. And so then to build off that is, really, it is not hard to understand that you went into work of being of service even though your business isn't a not-for-profit, you are helping those who are doing things that are transforming this world, and you are transforming this world as well. And so as part of your legacy work, I love that this is what's sitting underneath it all. And it's what I've noticed you always come back to in your work. Like this is where the truth is, and this is always this like the sanity checkpoint for you. And I love that. I think for people who have got children, this is something to note, because you're not, don't just do things for the sake of doing things. This is having a significant impact, and look at what's being created as a result of all of that. And I think that's so incredible.
Yeah, and I think my parents probably still have that influence on me as well. My mother, for example, at the moment, she had a hip operation and she subsequently has fractures in her pelvis. So she's been effectively bedridden and in a lot of pain. Um, and it's been hard to watch, obviously, like it's hard to watch it, anyone you love being in that kind of pain. And they live about 3 hours away. So last time I went up to spend some time with them, Mum was saying, I'm not sure why God wants me to be in this bed, and but I'm still here, so I've obviously got a purpose. And she had decided that she was going to spend as much time as she could with the energy that she had. I mean, she's in her 80s. She would ring other people and see how they were, and be a voice of companionship and check in. So subsequent to that, she has managed to get up and about in a wheelchair a bit. And she has connected with people that she hasn't seen for 50 years, people that she went to school with or worked with. And she's just full of conversation, full of conversation herself about the conversations she's had. And then, my dad, he and I are very alike. Like, we're not really talkers. Like, we can spend quite a bit of time in silence together and not have a problem with that. And he's quite introverted and, doesn't necessarily want to be front and center, but he has a lot of competence and natural leadership ability, that it means he ends up in these positions of, I guess, leadership, and he always places himself in a position where he's not necessarily the leader, but he's in the background, kind of being influential in his own way. And I remember as a kid, when we used to have phones that would ring in like one landline, and I answered it one day, and this lady was on the other end of the phone, and she said, "Oh, your dad is so wonderful. Like, he doesn't say much, but when he does, we all listen." Um, so I think I've had those kind of influences. And even though I haven't, at the time when I was 17, so I haven't really spent a lot of time with my parents over the last 40 years. But those influences are so strong, and yeah, and really deep, I guess, and they kind of create who you are. I say to my mum, after years of therapy, I still turn out like my mother, which we laugh about. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've got a lot to be grateful in terms of like how my life has turned out because of my parents.
Yes. And it is incredible to hear that your mum, even not being able to be her fully active self, she still found a way to be in the community, to connect with other people, to still be of service, where most people would be feeling sorry for themselves, be in the victim role, be in like that defeated energy. And instead, she's in full acceptance, might not like it, but in full acceptance that this is what the present, is showing her and where she needs to be, but is also finding solutions, and not letting things stand in the way of the bigger picture for her legacy as well, which is, yeah, so inspired. I absolutely
I
love
know.
that.
Yeah, I feel like I've still got a lot to learn from both of my parents. Yeah.
But it's a good reminder, and it certainly sounds like both your parents are very much in integrity, and that is one of the first things that I noticed about you when we started working together. I noticed how that was at the forefront, and that was one of my main values for any new clients that I was going to work with. And in the sector that you're in, it is essential. That part is obviously essential, but you've got a beautiful combination of strategy and deep soul. So when you're working with, and when you first started working with these not-for-profits, how, how did you hold that duality working with them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't even know that if I have the answer to it, but I know I was talking to one of my mentors at one stage, and I said, how do I bring the love and the spirituality that I feel into something which is like very like a masculine kind of side. I guess I see the spirituality and love kind of as a feminine side, but I've been quite a masculine profession. At the end of the day, it's all 1 + 1 = 2. It's logic. It's very rational. And I thought I just really want to be able to at some stage marry the two things. And I guess I found it originally because when I started, I was going into organizations and I was spending, maybe a day a month doing the end of month accounting for different clients. And so I would be sitting in the office. So I had, was able to have like wonderful conversations with people, often being a bit of a sounding board or a listener for what was going on in their personal life, as well as potentially we would do the personal conversation first and then we would get on with the actual work. Um, and so those personal relationships and those personal interactions were really could be at a soulful level. And there's a lot of soulful people that operate in the not-for-profit sector. So I kind of take it for granted a lot, I think, about the kind of interactions that I have and the people that I kind of deal with. And I think, I am a great listener at the end of the day, like, because I don't, this kind of environment is quite tricky for me. I'm not used to talking a lot. So, but I do like listening and do like, getting to know other people. So that's a really wonderful way of, yeah, bringing that personal, and, I can do the numbers and, give you a report and, give you some, my opinion about what needs to happen. Um, but the best thing really is, how's your love life? How are your kids? Um, what are your goals in life? Like, what are you dealing with at the moment? Those kind of soulful connections, I guess. It's been a little bit. Oh, and I guess, yeah, as the business kind of grew and we, I took on staff. And over the years, I've worked out how to build a culture that side is just becomes naturally. Like, it took me a lot of time to actually get the right understanding of what team I need to have and how not to compromise on that. So we don't compromise on that now. If where possible, we we attract soulful people, and then having soulful conversations all day is pretty normal, where everyone kind of cares about each other and wants to have those deeper connections. That becomes pretty normal. So I don't necessarily write spiritual and soulful financial reports. They're pretty much the opposite of that, but that human factor is really important. Yeah, it's been a little bit tricky the last few years because I've and we'll probably talk about this transition from that kind of CEO and then managing director role into being just a director, and so I'm not in the office, and I've been with a co-author writing a book for the last 5 years, which has taken about 4.5 years longer than we thought it was. And I'm finding that, yeah, I've really missed those in the office conversations, and once this book is finished, which is very shortly, one of my priorities is actually get back to catching up with friends and family, and connecting with people like yourself who have that soulful side. And I just want to replenish my reserves that have been depleted so much over the last few years.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that and having you available because I love our conversations. And we will talk about that move from CEO to director. But before we do that, I've got so many questions. But you founded NFPAS nearly 30 years ago, and I'd really like to know what has been the North Star for you through it all, like through the evolution. Because even for us, like we've been working together for the last 4 years, but the evolution I've seen just in the last four has been significant. But over 30 years, what has been that number one North Star for you?
Wow, that's interesting. Never really thought about it like that before. But I think I know that I'm in exactly the right place. Like this is exactly where I need to be. This is exactly what I need to be doing. And I think that confidence in that just means that you persist regardless of what happens. Because I mean, I've had a lot of tough times on the way through. I think initially it was just the love of what I was doing. Like I loved going to the office. I loved going to clients. It was never a chore. It was just something I really enjoyed doing, and and no day is the same. Like I think I only went through one stage of probably 2 months where I thought, um, this is boring. And it was mainly because it was in the busy audit season and I knew exactly what I had to do every day for the next 2 months to get through that busy audit season. And that just bored me to sobs. Like I much prefer, going into the office, having a bit of a plan about what's going to happen and then something, everything be completely different for what you expect. And I've just been confronted with so many different business learnings, shall we say, um, that it hasn't been boring. I think if I'd been in one organization and had the same accounting cycle year after year, like that would just bored me. But I've not been bored, and I've just been constantly learning. And I think one of the things, I mean, the North Star for me is really about being of service and helping the world be a better place. Like NFPAS's vision is for world peace. And it's that really is the work the thing I want. Like I thrive in harmony and peace, and that's what I want for the rest of the world. And so that world peace, and then being of service. But I also, for me, it's like not being bored, and constantly learning. And one of the things I've been really purposeful about is not getting in the way of the business growth. I think as a founder, you don't understand your own limitations. And sometimes you think your way is the only way. And then you can stop the growth. Like if my energy was only able to cope with, a small, say 2 to 4 people business, that's where I would have stopped. But I've done a lot of personal work on myself over the years to make sure that I don't get in the way. So one of the most, I think, not confronting, but the biggest transformational things for me was actually bringing a CEO on. Um, because when you bring a CEO on, you have to let go. You have to take that step back. And we'll talk about this more in shortly, I'm sure. But um, yeah, just for me, it's like making sure that I don't get in the way of the business growth, because the business is its own entity. It has its own spiritual energy and that kind of thing, has its own spiritual path, astrological path. Um, so I don't want to be the thing that stops it from growing.
Yes. And it is, no small vision that you have and mission, but I love how world peace, wanting world peace, is woven into every aspect. It's in every decision, it's in every action, it's in every choice that has been made and continues to be made. And I feel like that is really your North Star. It is the simplest way to maybe explain your North Star, the vision, but it is what your all of the employees in that organization, all of the clients that you work with and change make for, all of that is being held in that North Star and in that legacy. And it is truly incredible to witness. It has taken a few years, even for me, to really understand the magnitude of this work that you're doing. And I've been learning as we've gone along as well, but it has been so um, humbling to watch the unfolding, because when we came together, you were still the CEO, and to see how that business has continued to grow even though you've transitioned out is no small feat. Like that is that being able to do that with that amount of grace, that amount of trust, the reverence in there is that is a very big challenge. And most times, more often than not, that doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen with grace. It's clunky, it's broken, it's the legacy starts to get diluted. And you see that in like big corporates out there. There are a lot of CEOs that are in organizations that they didn't build the business. It was never their legacy. It was never their vision, but they've been placed there. And some of them, because we can see what's happening globally, more than not, are creating chaos. And especially because they've got such big influence. And this is where my legacy work comes in. And also why I wanted to talk to you and share about your work is whether you are the founder or the CEO, you have to be anchored into that big North Star vision. That you have to feel it in every ounce of you. And uh, David, the CEO that you have um, passed the torch to, if you will, is in that energy. He wears it, his whole heart is NFPAS. And he is continuously, when you're not there, obviously I'll work with him a bit more closely now because you've been working on the book, but you are front and center in every conversation. Your mission and your legacy is front and center all the time. You're not, even though you are not there as the CEO specifically, you're not missing. And it is yeah, it is mind blowing that it can be done in that way. I had never seen it done in that way, and it has fueled my passion so much more with the work that I do. And I don't think I've ever said that to you directly, but it has. And um, yeah, I just want people to really understand that is very rare. And so, what guided the decision to step back? Let's talk about that some more. Like, what um what was the sort of that aha moment, like now is the time, and then what happened strategically for the operational side?
Yeah, okay. So thoughts on that. So I met David, I don't know how many years ago now. It might be, it could, oh, jeepers, it's probably, I think he's going to be 10 years soon. Wow. Yeah, and when I met him, he came to me. The universe works in amazing ways. Um, he was in a period of time where I would just regularly get approached by people to want to have a chat with me because they thought I was either influential in the sector or they wanted to get access to my database to market products or whatever. And so I was just being inundated constantly with people wanting to connect with me. And I really didn't have the influence or things like that that people thought I was. And so I was kind of batting people away regularly saying, oh, I don't have time. And I really didn't have time. Um, but David was one of the few people that kind of got past that filtering process. And I can't quite remember why he did. It may have been because whoever had referred him to me I respected and if someone I respected referred someone to me, I would potentially catch up with them. So I met David, and I was just so yeah, we just was so I was blown away, I guess, by who he was as a person. He didn't come from a traditional CEO role. He was very much into business development, but his energy, his authenticity, his willingness to kind of um, listen, and he's wanting to get into the not-for-profit sector. Maybe, I had a great conversation with him. And then because of what we talked about, I said to him, I would really love to just meet with you once a week and you can mentor me and help me with my problems. And so we went through a little bit of a stage where we were meeting at a cafe every Thursday morning. And I would just have this litany of issues that I was dealing with. And he just has this way of cutting through, and he has this really natural business acumen that he thinks everybody has, but no, they don't. He's amazing. And he was wonderful. And then I had an opportunity where I think I asked, yeah, actually, the first thing he did for me was actually run my strategic planning process for, I think, back in 2016 or something. So he did that for me. And then I had an opportunity to employ him for a couple of days a week. And then I had the opportunity to offer him full-time work. I remember talking to one of my managers at the time saying, I can't afford this guy. And he's Brenton, my staff member, said to me, you can't afford not to employ this guy. And it's one of the best business decisions I ever made. And David's job in the first year was to actually bring enough client fee money in so that we could actually we could afford to employ him. And it's just been wonderful ever since. Like, we are so aligned values wise. He is so respectful of my position and my vision. He's so supportive, and he's amazing with the team, and he's a real extrovert. So as much as we're aligned, we've also got those differences. Whereas I'm an introvert, deep thinker, don't really want to be in the office much. He loves being in the office. He loves people, loves talking, loves connecting. And so he's able to, I guess, bring my vision to life more than I could even. Like, I can hold the vision. I can do one-on-one conversations, but he can hold it for a group of people, and he can hold it out in the world better than I can. So it's that alignment plus his extra or different capabilities that has really made that happen. Now, the way that I guess I ended up moving out of the operational kind of side of things, I mean, David was probably with me 6 years, and we were managing the business together. So he gradually took over more and more and learned more and more about who we were and how we operated and what our accountants actually did. And then at the next strategic planning session, which I think was, I can't even remember now. Yeah, a few years ago now. We might have been, I was going to say 2020, but I think the last one ended 2020. Anyway, the following strategic planning session we did, I said that my next learning as a business owner was to become a director. Because I guess, part of this whole having a business thing it's great. I mean, it's a great way of earning a living, a great way of living your life and making your vision come true. But it's also a great learning tool and personal development tool for you as well. And so, when I started the business, it was me in the lounge room, and I did my own graphic design. I did the invoicing, I did everything. And then I moved into an office. I was changing my own toilet rolls, put in the hand wash in the hand basin, everything. And so if you look at through, from there to then, kind of managing staff and doing every aspect, your own HR, your own marketing, everything. And then you gradually get bigger and you can employ really good people like yourself to do things. And then you can employ a CEO. And so the next thing for me was I would like to learn how to be a director, like a board of one, and manage an organization even that step further, where I'm getting reports, I'm managing KPIs, I'm hearing about how other people are managing and perhaps putting my 2 cents worth in occasionally. But that was my next learning. So I said at the strategic planning day that was my next goal for myself. Now, you have to be careful about what you wish for, because then it must have been just before 2020, because then we had COVID. And so I moved home like everyone did, and I never went back to the office. So, David actually was in the office regularly, not that many other people were, but it was just a kind of natural transition. I was also starting to write this book with a friend Kerry, and I said, I just need a few months at home after COVID to keep writing this book. And I kept saying that year after year. And I have never really gone back to the office since 2020, which has now enabled David to actually, take on. And because he is so respectful, we catch up most weeks, and he gives me the rundown. There's not much that happens in the office that I don't know about. So he very respectfully keeps me up to date with everything. So I know when I go in the office, I know, I know what's happening work wise, but I also know, as much as David knows, what's happening personal wise. And for me as a boss and a leader, I want to know that stuff. I mean, yes, there's a side of it, where, okay, it's going to impact on people's work if they've got stuff going on, but I also care deeply about my people. And so if something's going on, I want to be able to, I want to be able to be in the office and go, just be a little bit mindful about someone's energy or how I think they're going. Maybe just make a comment to them about something so that they know that I'm aware of what's going on. And I can do that because I have David working in the business, and I also have a couple of other staff who keep me up to date too, because they know that I care. Um, so I can walk into the office not feeling like a stranger, like I don't feel like I don't belong, which would be pretty easy for me to do as an introvert, to kind of isolate myself and feel a little bit, a little bit trepidatious, I guess, about walking into the office. But David allows me to, he's very respectful and just gives me that information that allows me to walk into the office and, feel like I'm connected and know what's kind of going on. There's very few times when I get blindsided by something. And that's a credit to David for keeping me up to date with things. And so the combination of the universe works, as I said, works in wonderful ways. The universe has allowed this to happen. So I've said to the universe, I would like to learn how to be a director. The universe has given me exactly the right person and the right team. And that's exactly what's happening. So, it's been a real, I guess, lesson for me in that if you want it, you ask for it. And if it's for the higher good, it will happen.
And that really talks to your values as well, because a lot of the time when CEOs are transitioning into director, I think they're focused on the finances. They're thinking about what they're going to get. They sort of disconnect from the legacy part, even though they want their business to continue to be successful. I think it's something that is missed, and I don't feel like it's talked about anywhere near enough. But I as I said, I've witnessed, I saw that in real time, that transition, and it is being upheld in the most um incredible of ways. And it's so funny because while you were talking about David and describing what happens and how his approach and how important understanding what's going on personally for his staff is, when I come into the office and I'm engaging with him, I'm in business mode, Maryanne. I'm in giving him the facts, giving him the outcomes, the results, the plan, the next thing. And he brings me back to the personal. And it sort of startles me, because that's not that's what I'm trying to teach people to do. But it startles my nervous system, because I'm like, am I allowed to have this care? Like, am I allowed to be like, he's genuine, like just genuinely curious about my life, about where I am, about my health, about all of the things. And the the staff are like that as well. Like, I come into the office and the genuine joy of seeing me there, I leave, and I sometimes it's actually hard to digest. Like, that level of care is a bit hard to take in. And I've said it a few times in like staff meetings that I've attended, because I want them to know that it's not nothing. But I hope that when they listen to this podcast, and I'll encourage them to, that they understand this is just not the norm, and but it is significant. And even for me, this transformation and this sort of global change that I want to create too, it is this, but I'm actually living it real time of, of what it feels like. And it's like, it's humorous being on the receiving end, and I'm just in awe of it all of the time. Like, totally blown away by the level of care all the way through the organization. And it doesn't matter what role they're in, it is the same. And everyone who is inducted understands this is where the benchmark is. And that is legacy. And so I'm wondering and I'm curious, now that you've transitioned into the director role, has your perception about legacy changed?
Probably not actually. It's probably been reinforced, if anything, because for me the legacy really is around the values. So if I can create an organization that has, because caring is one of our values, we care about the people, we care about the environment, we care about, the world, the community, obviously care about each other. Like care is such a massive value for me. Um, so that is, creating that culture and that culture being able to stand whether I'm there or not is probably a legacy. And you did make the point about, when there's a temptation when you kind of go from being in the organization to being the director and particularly owner of a for-profit organization, like it's about profitability at the end of the day. Like how much money do I get to have at the end of the day? And it is a little bit tempting. I find myself a little bit tempted at times when we're having finance meeting, for example, we're kind of, looking at the bottom line, to put those kind of corporate measurements in because, every decision we make does impact on how much I get to take home. And it's not that like, I just find it, I observe that in myself because I guess I kind of ran the organization as a bit of a not-for-profit organization for a lot of years before David came along. I'm an accountant. I understand business to a certain point of view, but I wasn't bringing business energy to the business, even though we are a for-profit. It was all about, the care. And as soon as, money came in that I didn't need, it was immediately, right, what else can we do? What else can we do? And so I didn't take much money home. I wasn't always the most highest paid person in the organization. But when David came along, like he has a combination of real strong business acumen and understanding commerciality, but also with the heart. So I look at him and I see someone that has had that real congruence between business and heart that I was searching for, but I was more heart than business. So part of my growth has been to understand what business energy is, and the business does need to be profitable if we are going to grow and we're going to attract, better and better staff, and we're going to attract better and better clients. And he's taught me more about commerciality. So I don't have to be embarrassed about how much money I make, which probably I've got a little bit of mindset around, you're not allowed to be wealthy. So he's allowed me to feel better about the amount of money that I take home because he's obviously growing the business. And so my take home pay is growing. So, obviously the more we make, the more we can pay the staff too. So we share it about, but I don't have to be embarrassed about the bottom line anymore. It's an interesting dynamic. So that's kind of been another learning for me around commerciality, and that kind of thing. And now I've forgotten what you asked the question because I've rambled. So bring me back to what you were asking.
No, you have not rambled. It was about has the term and the thought about legacy changed for you now that you've moved into the director role?
Yeah, and I guess probably no is the answer to the question because we it's probably it's probably changed a little bit for me though because I've talked about being of service, but David taught me the difference between being a servant and being of service, I guess. Like you can be of service to someone without putting yourself beneath them. You can be of service to someone by being a trusted partner and being an equal to them. So whereas before we would have, pretzeled ourselves to take on client problems and make the client problems our own, as he says, if a client's in a hole, you don't jump down into the hole with them and be in the hole with them. You throw them a rope, or you go get help. You don't you don't kind of take on or you get in the hole and then they get out and then you're stuck in the hole. Like, you don't make your clients' problems your own problems.
Yeah.
But you can work together on problems. You can, be of help without being a servant. And I probably brought that servant mindset alongside more. Like, I would sacrifice myself in order for someone else to be okay. But I would never expect my staff to do that. And when I see my staff do that, like, it pains me, and David hates it. So we that's probably one of the learnings that we've got as a team at the moment, is to be the trusted partner and put ourselves as equals to the partner, equals to the client, rather than being the servant to the client. Um, so, because I would have previously said, being of service is my North Star, being of service is my legacy. But I think the legacy is really care. And you mentioned before about that feeling of being really welcomed in the office and that level of care. I had a client, they were one of my early clients, and some people might have heard of Sister Janet Mead. She started this charity years and years ago. She's subsequently passed away, but um, she was at the stage where she wasn't necessarily working in the charity. She would pop in, but the people that she had in there, if you walked in the door, you immediately had like five people come up to you, all wanting to embrace you. So I was the accountant. You wouldn't necessarily want to just come up and hug your accountant. But they had this real, like, you walked in and you just felt the love in the room. And they had a charity where um, they it was for men without community. So it was kind of, it was called it was a homeless kind of charity, but they weren't necessarily homeless in terms of, a roof and walls. They were more homeless in the fact that they didn't have community. So these women were the loving community. So the men would come in and they would have jobs. They had a garden. They were doing woodwork, and they were doing things that actually helped the community. And then they would have lunch together, and then they would do afternoon activities, and then they would kind of head off. And it kind of taught me, I guess, what it means to what is possible. And it's not necessarily that I want, if a client walks in the door, five people to come and, immediately embrace them. But it's this sense of welcome. Like, no one's a burden, no one's an irritant. Um, if whether you're answering the phone or whether you're opening the door, this is a person, this is a human being, and it's about welcoming them. And it's not an act, it's a genuineness. So the fact that you've actually experienced that, I probably take it for granted a little bit, but I'm the boss too. Like, everyone's got to kind of, be nice to me and welcome me into my own office. But to hear from, from you, who's just that step removed, that you sense that to me is, yeah, this is success for me. I've successfully created something or enabled something that brings out people's natural sense of love for others. And that to me is the great legacy.
It is a great legacy. And like I said, it is, uh, it was always my intention to work with clients with a greater purpose beyond themselves, which is how we aligned. It was, all, we were destined, but it is always being on the receiving end, because it's so rare for an organization to already be operating at that level like this. And so when I come in, I sometimes feel bad receiving the love and the care. Like, it has been an adjustment, even though I'm trying to get organizations, because when we started working together, and the work that I continue to do with you is marketing, but my business has changed over the years. And so this is what I'm teaching organizations to be like, but from all of this beautiful inspiration. But being on the receiving end is like, oh, and I like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I forget that, like, I need to be human as well. Like, even though I'm inquiring about them on a personal level, it's just surprising to have that in return, and to have businesses operating like that. That is world transformation. That's global transformation that I want to see as part of my vision. And so, yeah, I just love it so much. Just it is just so good. I can't even capture the gratitude that I feel all of the time about that. But the nurturing the team's well-being and their brilliance is something that you're known for. You started it. David is continuing to carry that torch as well. But in this economic landscape that runs on stress, how have you kept the well-being at the core of your culture?
Yeah, and that's it's an ongoing battle really because as accountants we are deadline driven, and our work ebbs and flows over a kind of a monthly cycle, and then there's like an annual cycle and that kind of thing. And as a growing business as well, like we are deliberately organically growing. Um, in order to grow, someone has to either you have to have a lot of capacity in your business, which is expensive, or people have to flex up and enough people flex up so that you can get the next person on to take on that work. And there's usually at least one key person in the organization who carries that stress. And initially it was me. So as I wanted to grow and put someone on, I'd have to hold at least, a role and a half in order to get that next person on, so that they weren't sitting around doing nothing. That there was work for them to get on with before, I could grow and get it on. Like, it's not like the juggle we have is like the work doesn't come in at the same rate as getting the staff in. So you've either always got extra staff capacity, or you've got extra client work that's not kind of getting done. So that's the constant juggle we have. And one of our values is flexibility, which means that we employ a lot of people on a casual basis, and not the traditional casual basis where your shifts constantly change and you may or may not have work this week. Like, we'll pretty much guarantee people a minimum amount of work, but it means that when some weeks are bigger than others, we're kind of asking the staff to kind of work more, the first 2 weeks of the month and not the second 2 weeks of the month, for example. And in return for that, I mean, we treat their stuff like adults. Like, there's no start time and finishing time. It's you come into work, or you start work when you want to, and you finish when you want to. It's around flexibility around, everyone's got a life outside of work, and it doesn't just happen outside of 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. or whatever. Your life kind of happens at the same time as work does. And I started the business when I was a single mum, so I was working crazy hours at night. And if Sam was sick, I'd have to be home. And so the not-for-profit sector was great with that. There's a lot of women in the sector, so people understand if you can't be there one day or other. And so I tended to employ other women, particularly who had babies, who had fantastic careers, but then wanted the flexibility around being able to be a mum. So we've traditionally had a lot of part-time mums do the work, which meant that and if you want to get something done, you give it to a busy woman. Women they can just have amazing capacity. So where was I going with all of that? Sorry, you have to bring me back.
No, I just went there with you, by the way. But it was very much around the economic landscape with stress being the number one thing. How do you keep the well-being part of that in your culture, at the core of your culture?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Thanks for that. So, so in order to grow a business, you you need to have people who are happy, who can flex up, so that you can get the next people on and that kind of stuff. So we constantly have this issue where, okay, we get a person on, we've got a little bit of capacity, which is great, but then the new person that comes on gets filled up pretty quickly, and then everyone's really busy. And then a busy season comes, everyone's even more busy. And then the cycle just continues. So as much as well-being is such an important part of the organization, it's really hard to, we can't maintain a same amount of work capacity every day or every week and every month of the year, because that just doesn't happen in our industry. But I think this culture of care, this value of care, means that well-being is high priority. Unfortunately, one of the learnings that we have now is part of this is around boundaries. I think too, as women, we say yes to a lot of stuff that we really don't want to do, or we can't do, but we think we should, or it just comes in I don't know if it's our DNA or our training or societal expectations or what it is. Or when you've got children, you're operating on little sleep, you're working, but you're also running a household, you're running kids. You understand, you get a sense of what your capacity actually is, and it's more than you think, but it also can burn you out.
Yep.
But you've got no reprieve. You've got no, especially as a single mum, there's no one that can take it all on for you. You have to do it. So this, when people bring this kind of mindset into the work situation, you're not always aware that people have got more work on than they should have.
Yep.
And I think this is an issue that David and I talk about almost every week, is around who's got more work than they can have, and how do we release that. And the bigger we get, the more complicated we get, the harder it is to release that. So I think that when we say that well-being is a massive thing for us, it doesn't mean that all of our staff are well. It means that it is something that we are constantly working on. It is constantly a priority for us. And as soon as David tells me that someone is not doing well in any capacity, I just want to jump in and solve the problem. Unfortunately, it's David's problem now. Yeah. So I can have a view on it, but David is the one that's actually managing that. So I think stepping away from that, sometimes it's hard to hear about what's happening. Sometimes I sit in those meetings and, my heart pounds, or I get a sense of a sinking feeling. But at the same time, I remind myself that I'm not the solution anymore. I'm not necessarily the solution. All I can set is the parameters and the values, and then trust in David to then make that happen in real life. And he's very, very good at it. But I just want to say that we don't always get it right, and it's a constant juggle for us. But we very deliberately put in wellbeing aspects, and we do things where we can, because care is such an important value for us, and that means care for our team. Our team can't care for our clients unless we're caring for our team. Yeah. And I think that as much as we don't always get it right, I think the team understand that is a really high priority for us. I think just sometimes the staff members are almost drowning before we get to know that that's actually happening, and sometimes that's a little bit late. I did have one staff member though that really taught me about boundaries. He would only take work on or take something on if he had space in his calendar for it. And he would put everything in his calendar, and so he would know whether he had space or not. And he allowed himself thinking time. He allowed himself some flexibility, so that you did have a couple of free spots if client needs came in. He could give a masterclass in this. But unfortunately, I don't have that, and the team isn't at that level. But jeepers, I would love everyone to be at that level, because David loves making a deal. He loves bringing new clients in. He can't stand a client that's not getting our services, because our services are so good. But it means sometimes that he does push the boundaries a little bit, and if the boundaries aren't held by the staff, they can get a little bit, end up having to do things that they probably don't really have the capacity to do it.
Yep.
And I've spent so many years burnt out myself. It was such a relief to get David on, because he could take on some of the responsibilities and the problem solving, and he's great at dealing with difficult issues. but the burnout comes because you're not holding your own nurturing, you're not holding, you're not looking after yourself first. And so I see it so much better in others now. And I think my stage of life as well, where, you don't have the energy that you had when you were younger, you don't have the mental capacity you have when you're younger. You're really forced to start looking after yourself more than you did, in your 20s when you could do it all nighter and still rock up the next, another 8 hour shift after you've done an 8 hour plus overnight, and you do another, and it's what you do. There's no way I could do that now. So I like one of the things that we'll really want to push for is about, allowing the staff to have boundaries. Like, you're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to look after yourself first, because at the end of the day, it's a great business decision anyway for me to have the staff like that, because they'll last longer.
Yes.
They'll life's a marathon, not a sprint. So, they won't burn out. They won't, they won't end up having the issues that I've had because they've looked after themselves along the way. So I think well-being is a two-way street. I can put programs in place, I can have the value there, but it does require, the staff and myself, for us to, nurture ourselves through that and have the boundaries for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much in what you've just said. And I'm sure a lot of CEOs and the audience listening, I'm sure that they would be able to relate to the nuances within managing well-being and growth of the business. So I love that. And there's I'm sure that that would have been kicking off quite a few light bulbs for the people listening. Changing gears now, I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned a few times about co-authoring a book, and I wanted to say officially congratulations, because you finished writing it now. It's in the editing stage. But what did the writing process reveal to you about yourself and your work?
Um, right. First of all, yeah, there's actually a few things I've learned about myself through this process. Because I did have writing a book on my bucket list. I didn't necessarily think that I would ever do it. I thought maybe if I did it, it would be after I, retired. Um, I think when I hit 20 years in business, I thought it'd be great to write a book just on the 20 things I've learned in 20 years, something like that. And I did kind of toy with it. But it's now been, I think we're into our 27th year or 26th year or something like that. So um, that's run its course. I think first of all, I get very attracted by new opportunities. Because I get bored easily. It's like, oh, when Kerry came to me and said, "I've got a business opportunity for you, and it's not Amway," um, I would immediately go, "Oh, opportunity." And when we first talked about it, this was really her baby. It was really what she was ready to do. Um, and she'd been looking for the right opportunity, and she came across the right publisher with the right kind of program. And then she thought she didn't really want to do it on her own. So she kind of, yeah, asked me if I would be interested. And of course, oh yes, it's a new bright blingy thing that, I'm like one of those blackbirds that kind of, just want to get all the shiny things and put them in their nest. And it's one of the challenges that I have in my life, that I have to really focus on one thing at a time, because I'm best at when I focus at one thing at a time, but I'm very attracted to new things. So I'm great at starting things, but not so good at finishing them. So of course, yeah, so that would be fine. It'll be 6 months. We'll get this done in 6 months. Meanwhile, she's working full time and I'm working full time. I don't know what we were thinking. And then, and all the ideas that we had around, digitalization and working from home, and I guess all the things that I kind of implemented, a lot of them became COVID happened. And then, a lot of them happened because the book, it took us a while to actually work out what we're going to write about, but it had to be about the not-for-profit sector because she's a serial CEO, and I've obviously been in the sector for a lot of years, so it had to be about the not-for-profit sector. Um, and if we'd written the book in the first 6 months, it would be very different to the book we've actually ended up writing. The book has basically evolved probably about 3 or 4 times during the process of writing it. But during COVID, we ran a forum for CEOs with the idea that, every CEO is out there trying to manage a not for profit through COVID. They're all replicating things. They're all reinventing the wheel. So why don't we get them together and they can share what they're learning and share processes and, policies or whatever they're doing so that they can learn from each other and then they don't have to invent everything themselves. So I think we ended up with, I don't know, between 6 and 8. It's really hard to get CEOs in a room, even though we were having it once a week. I mean, some of them only managed to get on a couple of times because they were so busy. But it became very clear that, I mean, COVID was an issue, sure, but there were all these other normal issues that happened as well. And I kept saying to Kerry, like, there's no new problems in the not-for-profit sector. There's just new solutions. Like, I've seen the same problems from when I started that are still problems now. Like, getting your board to be functional, for example, is one of them. So it became very clear through that series of forums that we did that there were probably 8 areas that we could focus on and that they wouldn't ever get old. And I should say the name of the book is Future-Proofing Your Not-for-Profit, a Survival Guide for CEOs. And so it's a bit future-focused, but it's also about sustainability. And then, so that was probably the first year we kind of did that. And then Kerry is such an extrovert. We're so opposite. We love each other to death, but she's absolutely opposite to me. She's an extrovert. So she wanted to get 100 of her closest friends involved. So she went and spent a year interviewing 100 CEOs and sector leaders. And then I would sit and listen to the transcriptions and I would pull out the quotes and the information and put it into a massive spreadsheet because that's what I do. And then from that, we were going to write the kind of post-COVID book, but then it took us so long that post-COVID came and went. And so it was like, all right, we're back to kind of the key elements and, what to do. And then it was really when AI came out that, okay, this is it. This is where the future is heading. We can now have a book which is about future-proofing, which will last the test of time, and it will have AI, the beginnings of AI in it. So we've pushed madly in the last to get it written. And yes, thank God it is now with the editor, although we've just got the rewrites back. So I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks writing it again or writing some more. And then hopefully the next edit will be a bit easier than that. But it is a complete book and it just needs finalisation and then we'll get it out and we're hoping to have a launch event in November. So, so it's been a massive exercise. And I guess the things I've learned are, one, I do really work best when I'm in control and on my own. I think I've been my own boss for so many years now that it is hard for me to work with someone on something else. So thank God it was Kerry. I don't know if I could have done it with anyone else. She's been absolutely brilliant. But at the same time, she's a leader as well. So it's hard having 2 people who are used to being leaders, used to, doing things their own way. So I wouldn't necessarily, Kerry and I have said we're never going to write another book anyway. But if I did, I'd just do something that was mine. And I'd tried so many different things to get myself interested in it, because after a while it's not new and blingy anymore. It is just hard work. And then it takes willpower. And I deliberately decided I wouldn't take on any other projects while this was happening. But, I got married, I bought a house, we renovated, I bought another property near my parents' house, we renovated that. We've had, kids we've got 4 kids between us, like they've always got stuff on. Meanwhile, the business is still operating. So like I'm the director, I'm kind of semi-retired, but I'm busier now than I've ever been. And then, Kerry's pretty keen to get a consulting practice out of the book. And so we have to get another business kind of side of things up and running. Like it's crazy. So, and of course, new projects come in, I get a bit more excited about them. So the willpower it takes, the persistence it takes. But what I did learn is that I love going to a coffee shop in the morning for a couple of hours, a couple of chai lattes, and I can write and proofread and all that kind of stuff. That I enjoy. So if I ever did it again, I would just say, right, the first 2 hours of my morning after I do my other stuff, the first 2 working hours of my morning, I'm going to a coffee shop and I'm going to go do this. and then it would happen easily. So I've learnt that about myself. Yes, there's a lot of life always sends you learnings, and I've learnt that's what I do. Yeah.
It certainly does. Okay, I've got one last question for you. If you could speak directly to a CEO who's feeling the pressure to perform, to continue to push through the burnout and all of the things we've sort of talked about, how would you invite them to consider instead? Like what would you invite them to?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've just started a course in miracles, which one of my mentors has put me onto, which is really all about surrendering. Well, part of it is about surrendering to what's happening. I think the whole concept of pushing um, takes up a lot of energy, like, making stuff happen. I do believe very much in the timing of the universe. I think it's about having the idea of what you want and knowing as clearly as you can what you want to happen, and then just allowing that to happen. Because as soon as you have an idea, as soon as you're clear about what you want and you're consistent about what you want, that goes into your subconscious, and your subconscious mind will actually make this happen. You do not have to push. So I think I always find that where I'm pushing and I'm getting frustrated, I always have to remind myself that now is not the time. I'm very clear about what I want. I'm consistent about what I want, but now is not the time for it. So it's like with the book, like Kerry and I have got frustrated along the way, that it hasn't happened as quickly as we wanted it to. Now, part of that could be down to my perfectionism, but also I feel like the book is like so much better now than what it would have been if we'd had just written in the first 6 months. And the consulting business that we would have as a result is going to be so much better and different. We'll be able to make so much more difference because of the time it's taken us to really analyze and think and get clear about everything. So I think the universe has its own time, and we get frustrated because it doesn't happen in our time because we want it now. So it's like, one, it's being very clear about what you want, and the more you can write that down and reflect on it, the better. But then it's about surrendering and allowing that to happen. And if you're hitting roadblocks along the way, don't necessarily try and push. Just say, okay, well, now's not the time. Something else is more important, or something else that I'm not aware of has to be put in place first before I can do this. Because there's some days you just get so much done, and all the things that you have been taking you for ages suddenly come to fruition. And you think, oh my God, why isn't every day like that? But it's because the timing's right.
Yeah.
So the more you can have just, I know this is, I've got one finger pointing here, but three fingers pointing back at me. It's like the less you can stress about things, the more you can just be patient and allow them to happen. The easier, I mean, one, you just don't have that stress and that kind of, shoulders up by your ears situation. And then two, it will happen anyway. Like, it's going to happen. It's just not necessarily today. And be okay. Like, you're in exactly the right place. You're doing exactly what you're meant to be doing. You're having exactly the right thoughts. You're in the right place, and it will happen. And when it does happen, if it's just taken that little bit longer, the joy and the satisfaction you'll get from that is so much more. Like, I know if we'd written this book in 6 months, I would have gone, oh, yep, that's fine. But because it would have taken us almost 6 years by the time it gets released. The satisfaction of that will be so much greater as a result. So there's nothing wrong with things not happening immediately. Yeah, and sometimes you do have to pull those all-nighters because that's what needs to happen. But you'll find the energy from somewhere, and you know and the more open you are and the more relaxed you are, the more miracles can happen. The more synchronicity you get, the more things that pop into your life. So that's a great reminder for me that, don't have to be quite so stressed about things.
Oh, I just love that so much. Thank you for everything, but also thank you for joining me on the show today. I will share the link to NFPAS the link to the future proof advisory as well, so people can have a look. And then when the book is out, I'll update the link for that as well. So for any not-for-profits who are listening, anybody who wants to read the book, whether they're a not-for-profit or not, um, can buy that book and read it and absorb all of that. But it has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege talking to you today. I know how busy you are, so thank you for sharing your time with me and for sharing all of that beautiful wisdom.
Well, and I'd like to say thank you for being in my life too. Like, I have loved our conversations. You are my soul sister. And I learn so much from you as well. I just love, yeah, the conversations we have because they are at that soul level. And yeah, I take away so much from the things that you know and you've discovered. And yeah, I've just really appreciated you being in my life personally. As much as, you know, all the things that you do for NFPAS as well, which is fantastic. But it's the soul stuff that I'm particularly grateful for you for. Thank you.
Me too, vice versa. That's an understatement, 100%.